Wow, I'm still trying to get over Lecrae's the interview. That was good, huh? And then also all that math. Wow. I mean, honestly, the Jubilee, the 49, he wants to be our 50th year. I mean, what? Jesus is the coolest. The other day I was watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I was watching it with a friend. It was my second time. It was her first time. And we're watching this film. And she's like, I paused it to like go get a snack or something. And she's just like, is this a martial arts film? And I was like, yeah, kind of. She's like, but it's sci-fi though, right? And I'm like, mm-hmm. But she's like, but it's also like a drama. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, but it's also funny. It's kind of like a comedy. I'm like, mm-hmm. She's like, so what is this? And I'm like, this is everything, everywhere, all at once. Like, what don't you understand? I mean, this is like a genre-bending, like mind-blowing, like, just destructive of all the like boxes of all the genres in movie history, kind of like just like throwing up on the screen. Isn't it awesome? And as I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about like this plan of redemption, like this assignment that I have tonight just for a couple of minutes to try to maybe explain Jesus a little bit in this incredible plan, this like cosmic plan that God has to redeem everyone and everything, everywhere, all at once. I was like, guys, I mean, I was overwhelmed. I'm like, how am I going to do that? I mean, how am I going to do that? This is like outside of every religious box. I mean, this is outside of every rational thought you've ever had. I mean, this is beyond your understanding. Like, how am I going to do that? Jesus' redemption plan. I mean, Jesus himself, the embodiment of the love of God, right? Poured out as an unstoppable force in the world, redeeming all the time this relentless pursuit of God's love that is what was so beautifully said tonight, literally hounding you. It will not stop. Like, it is unstoppable. Guys, I was preaching to a room full of high schoolers years ago. Thousands of high schoolers, and I was like all excited because their conference was called Unstoppable. And I thought, you know what high schoolers want to know? They want to know that they kind of have some power, right? They're trying to figure out who they are. So I'm like, okay, so I come up with this great message. I think it's amazing. I'm like, the only person that can stop the love of God is you. That was going to be like, you're the one. Like, you can, like, you're the only one. So I'm literally being announced, like, just what happened. And I'm walking up on the stage, and I feel God speak to me. I sense God speak to me. And God said to me, that's a nice message. I said, well, thank you very much. I wrote it myself. And God said, I know. It's not from me. I said, what are you talking about? And I almost felt like God like laughed, like not in a bad way, like, but like in a good way, like chuckle, like, like think about it, Daniel, just for a second. Like, you think, like, just suspend this thought for a second. You think that you could stop the love of God? I mean, you think that and then I had this like flashback into this jail cell where I was with this like darkened mind and hardened heart. That's what Philippians says happens if you put yourself at the center of your world. Your mind becomes darkened and your heart becomes hard. And it was in that condition that I had this revelation of Jesus. Literally, Jesus showed up. And like love, the love of God, the unstoppable, relentless, not like hounding of God's love, opened my mind, enlightened my mind, and softened my heart. And I felt like God said, like, there is nothing that can stop the redemptive plan of God, the relentless love of God. The love of God is unstoppable. And if you could just open to this love of God would not only enlighten your mind, open your mind, and soften your heart, But that love would keep going and it would lead you. Love would not only just like open you, but it would lead you into something so much more than you and so mind-blowing in so many ways. I was trying to think, like, how can I tell these guys about that? How can I tell them about that? And I was thinking about, this Ephesians 3 where the Apostle Paul, the same guy that wrote to this church, or this letter to the church in Philippi, who said to him, like, if you put yourself at the center of the world, darkened minds and cold hearts are what results. I mean, we don't have to look far to see that happening in the world today. Darkened minds and cold hearts. But if you could open yourself to the love of God, if you could relax into the love of God, if you could let love through the personified through this person, Jesus as the way into this divine love, if you could only do that, there could be this enlightenment. How far could this go? I mean, where could this go? I was held up on a plane on the way here, and it reminded me of this time I was on an airplane. I had to wait 4 hours for this like new flight, and I wasn't really feeling it. You know what I mean? I wasn't really in a good mood. And I finally got on this plane to finally get to this place, and I'm sit down in this seat, and the guy beside me is like looks like Tony Robbins. He's like in a thousands of dollars suit, and he's got white teeth, like super white, like glaringly white teeth. Like I just wanted to say you should have went 2 shades lighter when you got those things whitened, buddy. It's like hard to look at you, But he just looks like $1 million. I remember him so vividly because he introduced me to wasabi almonds. Anybody ever have those? They're life-changing, am I right? So he introduced me to wasabi almonds, and I remember him saying to me, "What do you do? What are you doing? Where are you going?" And sometimes when you're on a plane, you travel a lot, you have a couple of options. You can kind of like soften what I do so that people can like still be open, or I can just turn it up what I do. And then usually that like gives you some peace and quiet for the rest of the flight. So I was in that kind of mood. So I just said to him, I travel around, I tell people about Jesus. And I even said Jesus loud, like I travel around, I tell people about Jesus. And he looks at me and he goes, "Does that make you an evangelist?" And I was like, "Ooh, look at you with the fancy words. What do you mean? Like, tell me more. Like, tell me more why you're using this word, evangelist." And he goes, "Oh, I'm just asking because when I flew into this town, I sat next to a guy who said he was an evangelist." And I said, "When was that?" He goes, 3 days ago. I said to him, "How long have you been running from God?" And he looks at me and he goes, "How did you know?" I said, "Dude, I had to rearrange my entire schedule just to be on this seat, on this flight at this time in order to, like, first of all, understand wasabi almond joy, but also tell you a little bit about Jesus. Tell me more." And he begins to just, like, pour out his life about how he had hit bankruptcy and his girlfriend had left him and he had nothing left to live for. And I mean, I would not have seen that coming a mile away, guys. He looked like $1 million. I dismissed him as a rich, wealthy guy that I didn't want to know. And when we got to he wanted to know how could he start again? He wanted to know how could he make things right? He wanted to know how could he even make some of the things that he had done so wrong that had caused him all this harm. How could he make it right? And I told him there's only one way I know how to do this, and it's through Jesus. You can receive love, and love can enlighten your mind and open your heart and make a way where you thought there was no way. And that's how the redemptive plan of God begins on the inside of us, and it begins to flow out of us, and it becomes this like unstoppable force in the world, this redemptive plan of God. And he said, "I'd like to do that." And I was like, "Awesome." And so I'm eating wasabi almonds, but at the same time, I'm leading him in a prayer to open his life to love, to know what it is to be forgiven, to know what it is to start again, to know what it is to have hope for the next day. And so anyway, I'm at the baggage claim. We're both there. We're waiting for our bags. And he comes over to me and he goes, "I just need to thank you one more time. Danielle, you saved my life." And I said, "Oh, honey, that's so sweet, but really, like, I'm not in the saving business. Only God does the saving. Like, God saved your life. Like, you heard, he's a relentless hound of goodness and grace. He's just, like, never going to stop till he finds you. It's all God." And he said, "No, I get that." He said, "That's not what I mean. What I mean to tell you is that I had it all planned for tonight. I was going to end it tonight." Guys, the redemptive plan of God, the love of God is so personal and so intimate. It is so big and so wide and so but it's also so personal and intimate. That love knows you. That love knows you. When the Bible talks about how like there's nowhere we can go from the love of God, like if we go up to the highest heights and we take a look from the most cosmic picture, we will see God there. And if we go down into the depths of hell and we make our bed in this place where we think no one can find us, we're separate from God. Nobody, even there, God will be, his hand will guide us. And I feel like the prophetic unction, the Spirit of God, the Creator God himself told the writer of that scripture to write it down, because in the Spirit's mind, he could see, suspended from time, he could see Jesus entering into death itself on the cross to go all the way through to the pit of hell and kick a door in the back and say, "This way, guys. Come with me." I've worked with women who've been trafficked and exploited, and there's this one woman named Anna, and her story is just, I'm not even going to tell you about it because it's so dark. And I remember one day just saying to Anna, like, I don't even know how you're alive. I don't even know how you're alive. How are you alive? Like, how did you make it this far? And Anna told me this story about when she was little girl, about 6 years old, and her parents, who were part of the trafficking ring, who had beaten her, and she was showing, bruises and cuts, and they didn't want to send her to school because then they would be busted, so they locked her in a closet for the day. And she said, I was in that closet in the dark, and I was afraid, and I cried out, and I said, "God, where are you?" And she said, "Danielle, I cannot lie about this." She said to me, "I heard a voice in the dark, and it said, 'I'm right here.'" That's what love does. That's where love goes. That's what love can do. That's how you're loved. This is the redemptive plan of God. So the Apostle Paul, Ephesians 3, it says, like, I wish that you could fully understand. Like, when I even just think of you, you who are being hounded by the love of God, I fall to my knees and I just thank God, because I can see this plan that God has, this redemptive purpose that God has for the world, that the love of God in you is starting to flow. And I know that as you open to the love of God, one of the things it says in there is that Christ is at home in your heart, that as you enter, as you relax into, as Jesus enters you. This is so cool, guys. This is genre bending. This is everything, everywhere, all at once. This should be like, wow! As Jesus enters you, you enter him. As Jesus enters you, you open to love. Love then invites you to lose yourself in its flow and begin to move with love in the hounding pursuit of redemption and goodness and truth in the world, so that there's nowhere you won't go to demonstrate this love. And so the Apostle Paul says is like, if you could just let Christ in, Christ will lead you out. And then you'll be able, together with everyone, you'll be able to just glance, just begin to get a glimpse of just how crazy this love is, how wide it goes, how deep it goes, how long it can stretch. And even Paul says this, go ahead, test it. Test it and see how far this love will go. You can't get to the end of it. So I'm in downtown East Side. I lived there for many years. It's a drug-addicted community. So it's 7,000 drug users in 8 city blocks. I spent many, many years there with my son and my husband and a bunch of friends and communities. We had a mission training school there. Kind of just how to love well is really what we were training people to do. The only way you can love well, by the way, is to be loved well. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about God. This is the beautiful thing about Jesus. This is the pattern Paul's trying to say. If you could just let Jesus in to love you, you could. You could enter into love. And this couple were there. These two met at a mission training school, even though they said they wouldn't date. They fell in love. And they decided they wanted to get married where they met. The thing is, where they met is in this like really notorious, terrible drug alley in the like worst drug neighborhood. And so they're like, okay, that's where we're getting married. So our community went to work and we like washed out the alley and just tried to get rid of the urine trash smell, you know, a little bit. And we put down a red carpet and we got a string quartet and we kind of tried to make this alley into some sort of like wedding. It didn't work super well. I mean, it was still like a trash alley. It was like needles everywhere. There's trash everywhere. There's dumpsters, you know. It's a notoriously terrible, dark alley. But anyway, the bride and the groom decided that they would spread the news about this wedding so that everybody that was in that neighborhood knew they were invited. In that neighborhood, I don't know how to describe it to you exactly, except to say that everyone that's never invited to the wedding of anybody anywhere lives in that neighborhood. And so they're just like everyone you can imagine, everyone that's been written out of the story, that's been marginalized, that's been pushed to the edges, drug addicts and women who've been sexually exploited and trafficked and left for dead, and mentally ill folks, like everybody you can imagine that's not on the list of a wedding is in that neighborhood. And the bride and the groom and this little friend of ours, Kiara, she's 5 years old, a friend of someone who lives in the community. She's got this big basket of rose petals, you know, and she takes a step. But the corner of the neighborhood, the sort of epicenter of this horrible neighborhood is called Main and Hastings, which is nicknamed Pain and Wastings for obviously reasons. And they're standing at the Pain and Wastings and they're just saying, we're getting married, want to come? And Kiara's just like throwing these rose petals out. Just like rose petals. And people are like, what? And then the bride and groom are there like, it's true, we're getting married, want to come? Just follow us. People are like, what? And they're just kind of folding in behind. And I watch these guys. I'm standing at the end of this red carpet because I'm going to marry these guys. And they're all folding in. And all these people, like the hordes of the like unwanted come behind them. And we all like pile into this wedding. It's packed. There's like people on the fire escapes in the building. There's people everywhere. And these guys are getting married. And it's beautiful. The string quartet's playing. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I'm in the middle of this, the vows, you know, like, would you? Like all those wedding vows that people do. And all of a sudden behind me, there's a dumpster on my right. It just starts to shake. And all of a sudden, this guy just like pops up like, and he looks, his eyes are just like wide, like a saucer's. And he just parted my French here for a second, but he just goes like, holy shit. And then he just goes, he just goes back in, you know. And then I'm like, well, do you? Like, do you want to be, like, and I'm just like, carry on with the wedding because it's not my first rodeo in this neighborhood, you know? Like, I'm like, this is a weird thing, I know, but still, like, on we go. So they get married. Everybody shuffles into this drop-in center off this alley, and we all doing a reception in there. And I go over to the dumpster. And I don't know my dumpster etiquette, but I do the best I can. So I'm just like, you know, Oscar? Is there, hello? And this guy, Greek. And I go, it's real. He goes, what? I'm like, it's real. It's real. I know you probably had a bit of stuff last night, and you might be tempted to think that what you saw in this alley was just a figment of your imagination, or some product of a drug hallucination, because it's not normal. But it's real. And the reception's happening right now. And we'd love for you to join us. Would you come? I watched this guy climb out of a dumpster and come in to eat. That's what love does. That's what love does. And just as I was thinking like, oh, wow, that guy stuck in his dumpster. Maybe consequences of his own actions, maybe systemic injustice, maybe a life of neglect and abuse, maybe a pattern, maybe just a despairing, maybe the spirit that comes to steal and to kill and destroy made his life so small. And then the redemption of God is just as I was about to go, oh, that poor guy, God went, you can come out too, Danielle. I said, well, pardon me. What? I'm a professional. What are you talking about? God said, you can come out too. Of all the dumpster you find yourself in, of all the limitations you put around me and around my love, you can come out too. Of all the religious jargon that you place around me, you can come out too. Of all the judgments, you can come out too. Of all the boundaries, you can come out too, because this love is real. Because my redemptive plan is not some cool idea in a nice, neat place. It flows. It is unstoppable. It is a force. It is everyone, everywhere, everything, all at once. It doesn't matter how wealthy a person is, and it doesn't matter how poor and rejected a person is. This is how far the love of God can go. This is God's redemptive plan. This is the hound of heaven. This is the grace and mercy that's released on the earth. Would you open to love? How hard do I need to knock on whatever dumpster you've been in? They don't all smell like trash. Sometimes they smell like nationalism. Sometimes they just smell like fear. Sometimes they're shaped like addiction, or depression, or self-loathing, but there's a relentless knock. And I was trying to figure out, how do I? And then I just had this image of teaching my son to float. He's only like 4 or something, and we're in the backyard. We're in the neighbor's pool. They let us use their pool because they're kind. And I'm like, I love these neighbors so much, but should I be praying that they leave a lot during the summer? But anyway, and so we're in their backyard pool, and my son, he's just like wants to learn to swim so bad, and he's just like trying really hard to float. Have you ever seen someone try to float? Like trying to float? Like he's just like, how do I do it, Mom? He's like, bleh. And he's like, drown. How do I do it? How do I do it? He's like, bleh. And I'm like, stop trying. Like, what? I'm like, stop trying. Stop it. Just relax, man. Just like lean into the water. Just like let the water hold you. Just like stop trying. Like relax all your muscles. Like just, I was thinking like the people over the fence on the other side must be like, what's happening over there? Like my instructions are like, stop trying so hard. Just relax. Just let the water hold you. And I was praying for you guys, and I literally rehearsed that. Like I just felt like God's like, more of that, please. Just stop trying so hard. You can't understand love without love. You can't be love without being loved. And this is all part of the redemptive plan of God. This is how the redemption begins to work itself out. This cosmic plan God has to redeem everything, everywhere, all at once begins in you. And how you do this, of course, is you just stop trying so hard. You open. You relax into the very love of God. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to just close your eyes right now if you can. And I want you to see if you can begin. I mean, maybe just take a deep breath. And as you exhale, I want to see if you can relax your body into your chair. Can you let your chair hold you? Can you relax your muscles a little bit more? Can you try less? Can you open more? And I pray that as Christ comes in, makes a home in your heart, The roots of your life would grow deep and wide. And you could start to glimpse how high, how far, how wide is the love of God. This love that surpasses knowledge. This love that opens our minds, softens our hearts to be loved and to be love. By your Spirit we pray. Amen.